the good news, as we also did focus on yesterday, all of them have been released, and many of those who were involved in the kidnapping are being apprehended by the police. So well done there to the police authorities. But we're asking questions today about some facts and figures in this. Babajide Ogunsanwo, our data and information analyst, joins us this morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Good morning.
Good morning.
There are many who will always ask, like, look, why do people consistently engage in this? Because it turns out that yes, the police, they can get some of these lads, but you have some others who still feel this is worth going into, whether or not the police authorities are going to catch up with me. What have you found out? Because you've looked into this. Why is this going on?
And I like how you started, and you mentioned the word police here. And there have been several allegations that the police indeed are involved in some of these kidnapping scenarios. Now, these are allegations, and that's because the global world report that monitors kidnapping says that the trend these days is the negotiators often get a commission on the ransom paid for kidnapping. And that commission sometimes goes as high as 10%. So it's similar to how the real estate agents earn commissions on looking for property for us. So what we have is a scenario where you have a team that does the kidnapping, and you now have middlemen that do the negotiating for the release.
Who pays them?
Now, most often it's the families that pay the negotiators, who then hand over the money to the kidnappers, and then they deduct their 10% commission. So on both sides of the divide, on both sides of the Mediterranean, it's actually a lucrative and more structured business than it was years ago. And that's the challenge. And it's similar to we could look at kidnapping as similar to when you have your safety belts on. So when you have your safety belt while driving, does it give you an incentive to drive faster, or does it give you an incentive to be more cautious? And how does safety belts and kidnapping all connect? And it's because we all compulsorily now have to take a vehicle insurance. Now, if you have a comprehensive insurance, you don't get really bothered if your vehicle is stolen or damaged. These days, we are moving in from vehicle insurance to kidnap insurance. And so you have Mexico, for instance, that tops the list of countries that have the highest kidnap rates. Mexico. Even in London, kidnap insurance premiums are said to be over $100 million.
$100 million.
$100 million for kidnap insurance premiums. Because what has happened is the kidnapping isn't no longer an unstructured industry. It seems to be a structured industry.
Does the prisons help?
Now, the challenge with kidnapping is, if we look at the investigation we've done, and we look at the prison statistics, we'll find that most of the inmates in our prisons are being held for 3 offenses: armed robbery, assault, and basic non-armed robbery. Stealing, armed robbery, and assault are the 3 things that inmates are held on for.
Kidnapping doesn't feature here?
Now, kidnapping, aka abduction, only 347 people are in prisons for kidnapping. Only 347.
In the whole of Nigerian prisons?
In the whole of Nigerian prisons. Only 347. Now, to give you that in perspective, and why we see that number as being too abysmal to what is currently going on in the industry, 347 simply means all those in Nigerian prisons that are being held for abduction, for kidnapping, we could read out all their names in less than 6 minutes.
Wow.
Everybody that has been held for abduction, we could read out all their names in less than 6 minutes. So it doesn't really add up. But again, we should then ask ourselves, where are these prisoners coming from? Where are the prisoners coming from? So we can't talk about kidnapping without talking about crime. And we then clearly can see that 3 regions account for majority of where prisoners are: the South-South, the Southwest, and the Northwest. But more than that, it's accounting for where the prison inmates comes from, which is these 3 regions, is to look at the growth. So between 2011, Chamberlain, and 2015, the prison population around the country has grown by 26%. Between 2011 and 2015, 26%. Why that number is so big, is within the same period, the National Bureau of Statistics says the economy only grew by approximately 20%.
Wow.
So in simple terms, it means that the rate at which people are going into prisons is way faster than the speed at which the economy is growing. That is the challenge. But we should then ask ourselves, why are people going into prisons?
Well, today, interesting stats that you've been able there, but did you see any reduction in terms of, say, states in the South-South where we did hear that there were some laws put in place to try and stem the tide of kidnapping? For instance, Edo, Delta, I think even Rivers at some point had a law on kidnapping, but those 2 I'm sure of. Did you see anything that showed that this law could have had an effect on a reduction in the rate of kidnappings over the years, especially between 2011 and 2015, which you're looking at?
So here's what the facts show us, Malpe, and that is the future potentially could look very bright for families living in the South-South. And the future is perhaps in the second half of this year into the days ahead of us. However, historically, or history shows us, especially between those 2, that period, 2011 to 2015, 2 things come out. The first is the highest number of prisoners in the country comes from the South-South. The second thing it shows us is the highest growth between 2011 and 2015, 44% growth in prison inmate population. There's no other region that's gotten beyond that rate of prison inmates growth. So it clearly lets us understand that there's a major challenge, not just only in the South-South as a leading zone where we've seen a growth in prison inmate population, but among other zones. And it strongly correlates with the last report we have on poverty.
Okay, so you were going to tell us, why are people going to the prisons?
And it's because there are 2 reasons. The first is we have 2 types of kidnapping at the moment. We have people kidnapping people, and then we have unemployment kidnapping Nigerian youths. And so if you look at the unemployment problem, did it start today? No, it didn't. So let's look at how unemployment has risen and then kidnapping has risen between 1983 to date. So as at 1983, unemployment was only 3 points.
We need to see that stats now and just, so go ahead.
So as at 1983, unemployment rate was only 3.9%. As at when the general left in 1985, it was only 6.1%. The government came in and we've seen that steady growth in unemployment. As at the beginning of the Fourth Republic, it was 8.2%. When the current administration came in, it was 26.5%, Chamberlain. Do you know what the unemployment rate right now is? It is 33.6%. So 2 things. Never in the history of our country has unemployment been as high as 33.6%. And never in the history of our country kidnapping. Another thing we need to talk about, and something I call the 80-50-50 rule that we have right now. And what is the 80-50-50 rule? We currently have 80 million Nigerians in the labor force. 50% of them, based on the evidence we have, are below the age of 34. And 50% of these individuals that are below the age of 34, Chamberlain, are classified as either being unemployed or underemployed. That is the problem we have today.
That speaks volumes. So there you go. It's all there for us to focus on and address. Thank you for coming on this morning, Babajide Ogunsanwo, our data and information analyst. And that's where we'll draw the curtains today on the program as well. We thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Many thanks. I'm Sulaiman Alede.
Well, thank you. Have a lovely weekend. I'm Maokbe Ogun.